India, a nation of over 1 billion people, stands as a paradox of rapid modernization and lingering struggles. While its cities rise with gleaming skyscrapers and tech hubs, vast sections of its population remain entangled in an unrelenting cycle of poverty, suffering, and unclean living conditions. Across the country, millions navigate the harsh realities of life, where filth, deprivation, and systemic neglect define their daily existence. The streets of some of its most overpopulated urban centers reveal a disturbing picture. Garbage heaps spilling into roads, slums packed with desperate families, and a crumbling infrastructure struggling under the weight of overpopulation. The contrast is stark. On one side, booming industries and luxurious lifestyles. On the other, the destitute battling for survival in a system that often turns its back on them. From the slums of Mumbai to the congested streets of Delhi, an overwhelming sense of decay grips many parts of the country. It is impossible to walk through these areas without noticing the unbearable stench of uncollected waste, the stagnant water breeding disease-carrying mosquitoes, and the lack of basic sanitation that forces people to live in inhumane conditions. Open drains overflow with filth, contaminated water sources lead to severe health crises, and children play in environments rife with dangers that threaten their survival. The struggle for clean drinking water remains an everyday battle for millions, as many are forced to consume polluted water that causes deadly diseases. Despite ambitious government programs aimed at improving sanitation, the ground reality in many places paints a different picture. Entire communities still lack access to functional toilets, leading to the persistence of open defecation, which worsens the spread of illnesses. Still with me? Drop a yes in the comments to let me know you're tuned in. Beyond the physical filth, there exists an even deeper suffering. The crushing weight of poverty that dictates every aspect of life for countless individuals. Families packed into tiny, makeshift homes struggle to find work that pays enough to sustain them. Children are forced into labor, their small hands working tirelessly in hazardous conditions just to contribute a few rupees to their households. Education, a supposed beacon of hope, often remains out of reach for these children, as their circumstances leave them with no choice but to prioritize survival over schooling. Women bear the brunt of this suffering, many of them toiling as domestic workers or rag pickers, often facing abuse and exploitation with no means of escape. Even in rural India, where the air should be fresher and life should be more peaceful, hardship defines daily existence. Farmers battle against extreme weather, crushing debt, and a lack of government support, leading to thousands taking their own lives each year in despair. Entire villages are abandoned as families migrate to cities in search of a better future, only to end up in sprawling urban slums where conditions are equally unforgiving. The promise of opportunity often turns into a nightmare, as they struggle to find employment and face exploitation at the hands of landlords and employers who know their desperation leaves them with no bargaining power. As modern India races toward development, the question remains: who is truly benefiting from this progress? While corporations and the wealthy elite thrive, millions of citizens continue to languish in appalling conditions, their voices drowned out by the narrative of economic growth. The divide between rich and poor has never been wider, with luxurious apartments and shopping malls standing in the shadow of crumbling tenements and roadside shanties. The laborers who build the grand infrastructure of cities often live in makeshift settlements with no access to even the most basic amenities. Are you with me? If you are, type 1 in the comments and let me know you're still watching. Public health care, meant to serve the needs of the poor, often fails those who need it most. Overcrowded hospitals, lack of essential medicines, and an overburdened medical system make it nearly impossible for the impoverished to receive adequate treatment. Malnutrition remains a persistent problem, with millions of children suffering from stunted growth due to a lack of proper nutrition. The most vulnerable are left to fend for themselves, with no safety net to catch them when they fall. Corruption and mismanagement further deepen the suffering. Resources meant for the underprivileged are siphoned off, aid programs fail due to inefficiency, and the people at the bottom of society continue to be ignored. Slum dwellers face the constant threat of eviction, their homes bulldozed to make way for new developments, leaving them with nowhere to go. Those who speak out against these injustices are often silenced, their voices suppressed by those in power who benefit from the status quo. The struggle for dignity is a daily battle. Street vendors work tirelessly under the scorching sun, earning barely enough to feed their families. Rickshaw pullers, laborers, and domestic workers endure backbreaking work, only to return to homes that offer little comfort. The elderly, many abandoned by their families, beg on the streets with no one to care for them. It is a cycle of suffering that seems unbreakable. Yet, in the midst of this despair, there are those who fight to make a difference. Social workers, activists, and community leaders dedicate their lives to improving conditions, often facing insurmountable odds. Charitable organizations strive to provide food, education, and medical aid to those in need, but the scale of the crisis often outweighs their efforts. Individuals who rise from poverty to achieve success serve as a beacon of hope, proving that escape is possible, though the path is fraught with hardship. If you've watched this far, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think needs to change to improve the lives of those suffering in India? Your perspective matters, and discussions like these can help bring attention to these pressing issues. Don't forget to like this video if you believe these stories deserve to be heard. While India continues to grow and advance in many ways, the harsh reality of poverty, filth, and suffering remains an undeniable truth. The question is not just how to fix these problems, but whether there is enough willpower among those in power to truly make a difference. Until the most vulnerable members of society are given the attention they deserve, the divide between progress and suffering will only widen. The struggle of the poor in India is not merely an economic issue. It is a deep-seated crisis of survival that cuts across generations. Millions of people are born into a life of hardship, with limited chances of ever escaping the cycle of deprivation. In the slums of major cities like Mumbai, Kolkata, and Delhi, families live in tiny windowless rooms, often shared with several others. These overcrowded spaces lack proper ventilation, and the heat becomes unbearable during the summer. The monsoon season only worsens their plight, as rainwater seeps into their homes, turning everything into a damp, disease-ridden mess. Diseases spread rapidly in these conditions. Tuberculosis, dengue, cholera, and respiratory infections run rampant in densely populated slum areas. With inadequate access to health care, many suffer in silence, unable to afford basic medical treatment. Government hospitals, where treatment is supposedly free, are so overcrowded that people often wait for hours, sometimes days, before they even see a doctor. Many don't make it in time. The sight of patients lying in hospital corridors, waiting for medical attention, has become disturbingly common. Sanitation remains one of the biggest challenges. In many urban slums, there are no proper sewage systems. Open drains overflow with garbage and human waste, creating a breeding ground for diseases. In the absence of functional toilets, people are forced to relieve themselves in the open, exposing them to further health hazards. Women and young girls, in particular, face immense challenges due to the lack of safe sanitation facilities. Many wait until nightfall to find a secluded place, risking their safety in the process. Crimes against women in such vulnerable situations are alarmingly high, yet the authorities often turn a blind eye. Are you with me? If you are, type 2 in the comments and let me know you're still watching. While cities struggle with overcrowding and filth, the situation in rural India is equally dire. Here, the problem is not just poverty but also neglect. Entire villages are left behind, with little access to development, education, or healthcare. The agrarian crisis has pushed countless farmers into desperation, as unpredictable weather, poor irrigation, and mounting debts force them into a state of hopelessness. Reports of farmer suicides are shockingly frequent, as many find themselves unable to repay loans and are left with no options. The education system, meant to be a ladder out of poverty, is failing those who need it the most. In the poorest areas, schools are severely underfunded, lacking teachers, basic infrastructure, and learning materials. Many schools do not even have proper classrooms, forcing children to study under trees or in broken buildings. A significant percentage of children drop out before reaching high school, either because they have to work to support their families or because they simply don't see the point in an education that leads nowhere. The lack of opportunity fuels a dangerous environment for exploitation. Child labor is rampant, with thousands of children working in factories, construction sites, and hazardous industries instead of attending school. These children, often as young as 5 or 6 years old, work long hours for meager wages, risking their health and safety daily. The industries that employ them, brick kilns, garment factories, and roadside eateries, operate with little fear of consequence, as enforcement of labor laws remains weak. Human trafficking is another tragic reality. Many poor families, desperate for a way out of poverty, unknowingly sell their children into bonded labor or forced prostitution, believing they will be given better opportunities. In many cases, these children are never seen again. The stories of missing children and broken families are endless, yet the problem remains largely ignored by those in power. The caste system, though officially abolished, continues to dictate social hierarchies, making life even harder for those at the bottom. In many parts of rural India, Dalits and other marginalized communities face systemic discrimination, denied access to land, jobs, and even clean drinking water. Violence against these groups is common, as they are often attacked for trying to break free from their imposed status. Honor killings, mob lynchings, and social ostracization remain grim realities, especially in conservative villages where caste-based oppression is deeply entrenched. For millions of people, the struggle for survival is an everyday battle, fought in the shadows of a country that is often celebrated for its progress and development. The media rarely highlights these stories, choosing instead to focus on economic growth, political rivalries, and celebrity news. Yet, behind the glitz and glamour, a significant portion of the population continues to live in extreme suffering, with no real hope of change. Are you with me? If you are, type 3 in the comments and let me know you're still watching. Despite the overwhelming challenges, acts of resilience and hope shine through. Many grassroots organizations and individuals work tirelessly to improve conditions, offering free education, medical aid, and skill development programs to those in need. Their work is crucial, but it remains a drop in the ocean compared to the scale of the crisis. If you've made it this far, we want to hear from you. Do you think enough is being done to address these problems? What solutions do you think can help bring meaningful change? Drop your thoughts in the comments and be part of this discussion. As India continues its journey towards modernization, the question remains: who is truly benefiting from this progress? Will the millions struggling on the margins ever find relief? The answer depends not just on policies and government intervention, but on a collective effort to acknowledge and address these pressing issues. Are you with me? If you are, type 4 in the comments and let me know you're still watching. The harsh reality of poverty, filth, and mass suffering in India is a complex issue that cannot be ignored. It is a crisis that stretches across cities and villages, affecting millions who struggle each day just to survive. The contrast between rapid modernization and deep-rooted deprivation raises critical questions about the country's progress and priorities. While technological advancements, economic growth, and infrastructure development are celebrated, the vast majority of India's poor remain in the shadows, battling hunger, disease, and exploitation. Their voices are often unheard, their struggles unseen, and their suffering dismissed as an unfortunate side effect of an advancing nation. Addressing these problems requires more than temporary aid or government schemes that often fail in execution. It demands systemic change, better governance, and accountability. It requires a shift in societal attitude, where the privileged recognize their role in advocating for those who are struggling. It calls for stronger policies that prioritize education, healthcare, and employment opportunities for the underprivileged, ensuring that economic progress is not limited to the elite but reaches every corner of the country. The resilience of India's poor is undeniable. Despite the unrelenting hardships, many continue to fight for a better future. They work tirelessly, hold on to hope, and seek any opportunity to improve their lives. The presence of dedicated social workers, activists, and humanitarian efforts shows that change is possible. But the question remains: is there enough will politically, socially, and economically to bring about real transformation? The fate of millions depends on whether India can bridge the widening gap between wealth and suffering. Will the country rise to address its deepest flaws? Or will the struggles of its most vulnerable continue to be ignored? The answer lies in collective action, awareness, and a commitment to creating a society where dignity and basic human rights are not privileges for a few, but a guarantee for all. If this discussion has resonated with you, let your voice be heard. Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's talk about what real change should look like. Like this video if you believe these issues need urgent attention, And don't forget to subscribe to stay informed as we continue to uncover more untold stories. Together, we can raise awareness, challenge the status quo, and push for the changes that millions so desperately need. Thank you for watching. Stay aware, stay engaged, and let's work towards a future where suffering is no longer the norm for so many.